Hi, in this video I will show you how the dotlegal contract module works. You can use the contract module to manage and get an overview of all your contracts within your organization. You will find the contract tab in the menu on the left, where you can see all existing contracts in your system. From this overview, you can access a specific contract and view information about that, or you can create a new contract if you need to onboard a new agreement. To onboard a new agreement, you select Create Contract, where you can give the contract a name. This contract, you can give a template, which is defined in the drop-down. You can have several different templates in your environment so that the information that you register on a service agreement and an NDA doesn't need to be the same. The idea is to capture the most essential information in your contracts, and the contract templates should reflect that. If I create a new contract, I will get an overview where I can type in different information about this specific contract. I can have several different fields based on the template that I have selected, and I will also have this flow up in the top of the screen where I can manage different inputs in different steps. So to onboard an agreement, I will navigate through all the steps in this stepper and type in the relevant information about the agreement. For instance, I can select my own counterpart on the agreement, who should access the contract, a description of the contract, and so on. The idea is to, as mentioned before, type in all the relevant information that you need to get an overview of on your existing contracts. You can always navigate to the overview, where you can get an overview of the drafted contract as it looks now. And in the top right corner, you can edit the contract and continue typing in relevant information. Some of the most central parts, of course, on all contracts will be who is the counterpart that you have made the agreement with. You can select a counterpart or multiple counterparts on the same contract. Of course, also the contract documents are relevant. From here, you can add one or more documents, which is the specific contract that you are onboarding. You can either upload the document itself or link to a file, to a URL where you can find the contract document. When you work with contract management, you don't need to write in all information from the document. The document on the contract itself will serve as it is, but of course the most relevant information, such as in a service agreement, for instance, the SLA, you can type in the contract template so that you will be able to get an overview of those information later on. If I just navigate back to the overview and find a contract with some more information, you can see that when I have added information to the contract, I will get a specific overview of this specific contract. I can see the overall overview up here, but I can also select all contract data and get one full overview of the contract as it is. In the bottom of this overview, you will have several tabs. These tabs gives you more information and functionality on the contract itself. You will find the uploaded documents, and you can also manage the documents from here. You can find the counterparties on the contract. You can add contact persons for the contract. So this could be the contact you have with the counterpart. You can add several obligations to the contract. Obligation is recurring tasks that needs to be carried out in terms of this contract, where you can add from either a template you have defined, or you can create a specific obligation for this contract. You also have an access tab. This access tab shows you who in your environment has access to this contract. This means that when you create a contract, you need to grant access to other users before they can see the contract. This is what we did on the access tab. And if you select manage user access, you will also navigate to the access tab where you can select different informations in terms of who should access this contract. As default, the contract manager will be able to see the contract, but you can also grant additional user access by selecting one or multiple users in the additional user access tab. You can also grant access to a business area. So, for instance, all users with a link to HR will now have access to this specific contract. As in this example, you can also select that everybody in the environment should be able to see the contract. Then you don't need to give additional access because all users can now see this contract. If a specific user should not be allowed to see the contract, you can always select an excluded user, and now this user will not be able to view the contract. All these settings will be reflected in the access tab, so you always have an overview of the specific users who can access a contract. You can also relate a contract to other contracts. So let's say there's a link between this agreement and this agreement. Then you can make a smart link so those two contracts relate to each other. At last, you can create tasks. So where the obligations are recurring activities you need to do within an agreement, then the task could be one-time task that needs to be done. So let's say you are wondering why this contract has a 12-day notification date. Then you can create a task, ask questions, and get colleagues to answer those by creating a task. So let's say why, ask Anne, give her a deadline, and create a task where you can add a description and ask a question, and she will get notified about this specific task and will be able to mark it as completed and maybe make an update to the contract. Lastly, when you see in the overview, your contracts can have several different statuses: approved, or drafts, archived, or expired. When you create a new contract, as I did in the beginning of this video, it will be created as a draft. So this means this will be a draft until you say, now it's an approved contract, and you can change the status on the contract. When the expiration date arrives, the contract will automatically get a status that says expired. From here on, you can say, now this contract, I will, instead of having an approved contract with an expired status, I will either update the period so that we have a new end date on the contract, or I can archive the contract as the last status. This way, you can create and manage your contracts, important documents on contracts, and important fields on the specific contracts within different templates. You can grant access to contracts and place responsibility in terms of operating this specific agreement, and in this way get an overview of all your agreements and make sure that important dates are met. You will also be able to look at your, for instance, at your vendors and see all contracts that are agreed with a specific vendor on their contract tab. This way you can have a vendor with multiple contracts and always get an overview of all the contracts you have with this specific vendor.